Okay, so when we look at the three spheres that you have outlined of curriculum, administration, and practice, I think the first thing we have to do is think of them as a whole and also think what's behind that. The administration, there is no part of that that is independent of other forces. So when teachers interact with administration, they need to keep in mind always that the administration is under pressure from other bureaucracies and so forth, and keep that in mind, particularly when there is some sort of problem that often does arise. I don't know if that's true in India, but in city schools here, we have large classrooms too. Not that is the preferred, but we can very often have 40 or 50 in certain classes. And so most teachers find that difficult. It's not, because it's not 45 units, 45 all the same. They might be sitting in the same desk, but those are 45 different people with different ways of thinking and so forth. So for the administration, if they're really concerned about this, they have to have as much open line of communication with the teachers as possible. And the teachers, that's probably very idealistic because of all the other pressures. But we can think of possibilities. But even if that's not possible, the teacher gets a curriculum. And there it is. As you say, this has to be delivered. So let's look what we have to deliver and look at two things. What is it that the system has in mind as a purpose for delivering this? And what is it that ideally I would have in mind if I had chosen to deliver this? So then looking at that and knowing that you have to have some sort of outcomes for the authorities, be it grades or whatever, are there ways in which I can present this, whether it's oral or visual or whatever, inserting aspects that will help the students to think, one, critically in the sense of what is it I'm learning and why am I learning, and about how they could apply that beyond putting it on using it as an example in answer to a test or whatever. So the method that has been used for a long time by people in that situation has been called infusion. And infusion in Catholic schools in particular in the United States was the teacher looking at that curriculum and then planning to somehow steal some time so that reflective questions could be raised on that very material that would facilitate thinking about peace and justice issues, whether it was a math thing or a literature thing or whatever. If you look, they usually would find a way to do it. Now, all of this is just hope. But if we go into the classroom with our mindset on doing our best to withdraw from all those students as much as possible what they have in terms of learner potential. So that's very hard because there they are, all 45 of them. Okay. So one practical thing, we all aspire to learn all the names of our students. So when you have the list, and you're always tempted to make little notes on the list about this issue and that problem with that. I would suggest that you do everything you can to learn about them as individuals. And one way you can do that is to take a little time during the beginning of the class, the first stages of the semester or whatever, and just let them talk to each other one-on-one, just a little bit, and then write down things about what I learned about my classmate. But not put, the game is you can't write your classmate's name, you have to remember her or his name. But you have those notes. This is what I learned about my classmate. And do that until as many children have talked to each other as possible. And throughout the year, do whatever you can so that they begin to think of themselves more as a class, a learning community, and not just 40 kids filing in and taking their seats. But the teacher can say, I don't want any names on any of your notes, but I want to know some of the things you're learning about each other because I'm sure they're wonderful. So could you lend me your notes about your classmate? And when I finish with them, I will leave them on my desk. If you want to take them back, you can. So it's one small way to start a process of building a sense of we're here to learn together, including the teacher. And part of what the teacher is learning is who the students are and how the teacher can best relate to them, even under those circumstances, even if the desks are screwed into the floor. You know, there are always ways that you can start a communication process. The most important things to me in terms of teaching autonomy is the self-concept and presentation of self of the teacher to the class. I think the autonomy lies in somewhat in the engagement of the process that I talked about, where you look at the curriculum and determine, are there ways in which this could be used to the purposes that I would select. But it's always a narrow line to walk when you are working in very prescribed situations. I think the solidarity between teachers and students is the most important part of any element of autonomous learning in any situation. And so when the process of building the learning community, as much as it can happen, starts, it has to be that the teacher is part of the process and that the teacher sees her or himself as part of the process, and that autonomy in the sense of my being able to have control over aspects of this learning will depend in large part in how I relate to the students. And the most important thing is for the students to feel respected by the teacher. And that they are all equal. Now, that's the hardest thing in the world because, they're all different. And there are times when one has to restrain one's feelings about behaviors and things that are said and so forth. But keeping in mind always that, the kid is a person and the person must be respected, and, people are problematic. So if you can maintain the sense of authentically, even though you would discipline if necessary or so forth, but do so with that inside yourself, the sense of respect for the students. I learned that from students. I learned that the more they understood that I respected them, the more they would buy into what I was proposing we do in the classroom. So that's, that it was a kind of reciprocal relationship that is so important in any of these processes is, reciprocity. And I give what I can, you give what you can, and together we'll have a richer learning experience. Even if it's in the limits of a prescribed curriculum, and many students just in rows in the seats. Now, there's a second aspect of that, and that is autonomy relates as well to solidarity. I think it's very important for teachers to support each other. I think we have faculty meetings and talk about what we're doing and what's working and not working and so forth. But we also have to be conscious of the whole atmosphere of the school will be more conducive to a learning community if the teachers are supporting each other, if the teachers know as much as they can about what other teachers are doing. Especially in the higher grades, where students in a given term have several teachers. I think we make it our business to know what our colleagues are doing and why they are doing it, and to try to give as coherent an experience to our students as we can in light of that. And also that solidarity is important when there are occasions when there are differences with other elements of the whole system, as solidarity is always important when a group with a common interest sees that those interests are in some ways being undermined by something. So if we're together, then we can face that as a group and communal issue and problem. But the main thing of all is what we have in our heads and our hearts when we walk into the classroom. And so, and it shows. They know. They, as sometimes they say, they can smell it the minute they see you, I mentioned one where the students interview each other as a step. And also, I would like to note that there are lots of curricula, and if there is a possibility to introduce something other than what you're handed, it's there. Uh, but let me just suggest another step that would be both a step towards students taking ownership of their learning, as well as learning community building. And that would be on one of the very first days after all of the preliminary business is, do you have your notebook and do you have the blah, blah. Now, what is it that you most want to learn in this class? And why do you want to learn that? And why do you think your life might be better if you learned that? And if you don't want to learn anything in here, how can you learn from getting along in that situation? So there are 4 questions. And the one that is really most important for the teacher will be that 4th question. Because, those are the kids that are either going to go, or, the energies that they put out are not going to be the energies that you want in the group. So, 1, you begin by honoring their hesitancies and letting them know that you respect them. And then you also have them talk about what they want to learn and say, oh, yeah, that's a good learning goal. That's a good learning goal. And here, your learning goal is a lot like her or his learning goal. So maybe at some point we can change our seats so you could talk to each other about something for your common goal. That might not all be possible, but, urge them to talk to each other, urge them to talk about the subject and to try to engage with the subject and engage with it as part of a common learning. Because the more engaged each individual learning is with the learning of the others, the richer and deeper will be the learning of all. And, the processing what we receive. And that's kind of the beginning of starting to process. And you could also use that in terms of each day. Just take 1-2 minutes at the end of class and say, okay, just either jot down in your notebook or just think about what did you learn today, or what's a real confusion today that you didn't get cleared up yet. And as for the latter part, if you want to stay after class and ask me, okay. If not, ask your friends. But if you didn't get it, maybe somebody else did. So even start helping each other learn outside the classroom as well as inside the classroom. And there are lots of little, tricks like that. But the trick is not to trick the students. The trick is to involve the students and, to make that subject matter something that is going to be part of their lives, if only for this semester, and they should just do the best they can with it, even if they don't like it very much. Somehow, with the help of a little help from our friends, we'll get through this class.